The vaudeville showman and the superstar are central to Donald's cinematic sense of himself and propel him forward in life, business, politics, and everywhere else. Whether he's bragging to the media about a handful of expensive buildings, firing anxious young entrepreneurs as a reality TV titan, or body-slamming Jeb Bush in pursuit of the White House, Donald doesn't care that deeply about the buildings, the TV show, or the presidency, really. Each of those things is just a prop that he uses to embroider the Donald show with ever more attention. Donald's need to occupy center stage, enveloped in the warm glow of the spotlight, gazed at, listened to, and retweeted by millions, explains the zany, bespoke cartwheels he keeps turning for all of us. And the guy Donald thinks we, the voters, the viewers, the critics, the fans, the readers, the dumbfounded masses, see when he goes all Sergio Leone on the world? Clint Eastwood, squinting, flipping his poncho over his shoulder to expose his six-shooter, the badass, dueling his way through the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's who Donald projects whenever he narrows his eyes and scowls for the cameras. Somewhere in the world there is an old, burdened mirror that the Hollywood aspirant has gazed into time after time to practice his Eastwood pose, late at night, when no one else can see him. Although Clint Eastwood looms large in Donald's imagination, his favorite movie is Citizen Kane, and he feels a special connection to that film's director and star as well. I loved Orson Welles. He was totally fucked up. He was a total mess. But think of his wives, think of his hits, Donald told me. He was like this great genius that after 26 never did it. He became totally impossible. He thought everybody was a moron, everybody was this, everybody was that. If he had a budget, he'd exceed it by 20 times and destroy everything. He became impossible. I loved that. What's not to love about somebody like that? Somebody like that, channeling Welles, might have launched his signature and never-to-be-replicated again creation, Trump Tower, when he was only 37, a tyro who had seemingly lapped his father and dispensed with a history built entirely on his dad's financial support, who was on the cusp of bringing a bunch of banks along on a mammoth and misbegotten shopping spree, who was still the bright and shiny young face of the new New York. It would be easy for somebody like that to look back on his business career today and think of Trump Tower as a high point, his own Citizen Kane, and to wonder if the human shingle who survived that mess was the business titan he had wanted to become when he first began his march out of Queens. But somebody ultimately humbled by those past glories would have to be a little more introspective, less gleeful, more grounded, less effervescent, more disciplined, less unyoked and more rational than somebody who could waltz from his induction in the World Wrestling Entertainment's Hall of Fame and into a landmark presidential bid that had him spinning the Republican Party from his finger like a yo-yo. He'd have to be somebody other than the presidential candidate who, in lieu of releasing his tax returns as proof that some portion of his self-proclaimed billions consisted of real dollars, released a letter from a doctor noting that his physical strength and stamina are extraordinary and that he had a good chance of being the healthiest individual ever elected to the presidency. There's much to ponder as Mr. Id's candidacy steamrolls past his competitors in this 2016 election season, and as he continues to court his base of frightened, angry, and economically displaced voters on Twitter and Facebook, with the same fear-mongering and social media savvy that made Father Charles Coughlin a radio sensation during the Great Depression, and Joe McCarthy a star chamber draw on TV during the Cold War. Will Donald's vivid ignorance about foreign affairs make him a little trigger-happy if he comes into possession of the nuclear launch codes? Will his Jurassic grasp of the global economy make him a less than ideal steward of immigration policy and trade agreements? Will his bohemian distaste for certain women and his plantation owner's approach to us versus them leave large swaths of voters disenchanted or disenfranchised?